Hey guys, this is Music Tech Help Guy, and welcome to part 16 of my pop rock mixing series in Logic Pro 10. In this video, we're going to be using aux tracks to sum together and bus process our different groups of instruments. So essentially what we'll be doing is we'll be busing the output of all of our vocals, for example, over to a new aux track, and then adding effects to that aux track as a group. This is called bus processing, and what we'll be creating are called submasters, or sometimes called submixes. Now, before I get into all of this, I absolutely know there will be two questions all over the comments if I don't answer them right now, so just bear with me. Number one is, why not use a track stack, or a track stack to do this? You can select a bunch of tracks, go up to track, and go down to create track stack. A track stack is specifically the summing stack, by the way, is basically audibly identical to what we're going to be doing here. Visually, it's not. So, you know, if you did this with a summing stack, you'll end up with the exact same result. It just looks a little bit different. That's really all. They virtually routing wise, it's identical. I just don't like to use them. So if you like to use summing stacks, you know, go for it. Track stacks are a pretty new thing in the DAW world. Aux tracks are not. So it's just what I'm used to. So that's the first question. That's why I'm not going to do that. The second question is, why not use a VCA? If you didn't know, as of Logic 10.1, they added VCA tracks to Logic. And what you can do is you can drag over a bunch of tracks that are like a same instrument, like all the vocals, for example. You can go up to options and you can say, create new VCA for selected channel strips. And what it'll do is you'll see a VCA assignment pop up, and you'll see all these are going to VCA 1 now. And at the bottom of the mixer, you'll see we have a VCA track, and this will control the volume of all of those vocal tracks. So basically, VCA stands for voltage controlled amplifier, and this comes from large format analog consoles. It's a way to group together your instruments similarly the way we're going to do with aux tracks, but there's one big advantage to VCAs. And it's that VCAs control the level of the channels you group in the VCA, just like an aux track. But the difference is that it also can control all of the send parameters. So, for instance, if I pull a VCA channel down for all the vocals, not only is the dry signal of the vocals going to come down, all of this wet signal up here bust over to these aux tracks is also going to come down with it. If you do this with an aux track, the way we're going to do it, if you pull the aux track down, the reverb level's still going to stay where it's at. So that's one advantage, but it's not as good of an advantage or as much of a benefit for me for our purposes. There's a few other benefits as well, but the main disadvantage for this video, for the purpose of this video, is that you cannot add effects to VCAs. So we couldn't bus process at all if we used VCA. So that's why we're not going to use VCAs for this mix. So I really don't want to get too deep into VCAs versus aux tracks today, but perhaps I'll do a video explaining all that in the future. All right, so sorry for the long introduction. I just wanted to make sure I was very clear about why we're doing it this way. All right, so let's just drag over all of our vocals, not including the aux tracks. And what we're going to do is on the output, instead of the send like we did before, on the output, we're going to change this output to a bus. So our first open available bus is bus 6. So bus 6 is going to group all of our vocals. So let's scroll down to the next group of instruments. We've got our synth pad and synth lead. I'm going to go ahead and group those together on bus 7. The guitar solo, even though we're not really going to bus process it at all, I still want to create an aux fader for it. So we're going to make that bus 8. The keys, the clean guitars, the keys in all 4 clean guitars, we're going to bus these together. They all kind of play the same thing, so it'll be bus 9. And the overdrive guitar and the bass, the main sort of like rhythmic motive, is going to be bus 10. So we'll choose bus 10. And then all of the drums are going to be bus 11. And sorry if there's a little bit of lag. My screen capture's struggling to keep up right now. There you go, bus 10, or bus 11. All right, so as you can see on the bottom here, it's created in the far right of the mixer. It's automatically created aux tracks for us, just like it did before. So remember, aux 6 was our vocals. So I'll just say vocals, and then we had the synths, and then we had the guitar solo. Then we had the keys and clean guitar, and then we had the guitar and bass. Here, I'll just shorten that a little bit, GTR bass, and then we have our drums. And there we go. So now we have these 6 aux tracks that we've grouped all of our like instruments together. So for instance, if I just solo out, let's say just the drums, we're just going to hear all the drums, at least the dry signal of all the drums, through this aux channel. So let's start there. What I essentially want to do is I want to fatten up the drums, the guitar and bass, the keys and the clean guitar. The solo will just be volume changes. The synths will just be volume changes. And the vocals, I want to fatten them up a little bit too. So the first thing I'm going to do with the drums is I'm going to add the multi-pressor, which is a multi-band compressor. In recent years, I've sort of started to shy away from multi-band compression, except for bus compressing, but essentially what this is 4 different compressors that split that are separated by frequency range. So you can see from 20 hertz to about 160, 170 hertz is this low compressor. There's a mid-range, a high mid-range, and a high frequency compressor. So really what I want to do with the drums is sort of control them a little bit more, and also add a little bit of heft or body to the mid-range. So what you can do is you can solo each band, each compressor, and just hear that band. So let's let me just maybe create like a looped area here. There we go. And I'm just going to listen to each range, and I'm going to adjust the threshold of each range, which is this top slider, the ratio of the compressor, the attack time, and the release time. There's also an expander in here too, but we're not going to use it. So I'm just going to solo out the low frequency. Let's listen to that. So you can see I pulled the ratio up to about 22:1, pulled the threshold down. Let's make the attack time a little longer just to let some of the transient through, and pull the release time up a bit as well. Now, you'll see when I play it, there's actually 2 meters here. The one on the left is the input signal, and the one on the right is the output signal. So that's the actual compressed signal. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, there's the high mid range. Yeah, and all these I'm trying to pull the attack time up quite a bit so I don't sort of cut out the transients in the snare and the kick especially. Here's the high frequency. And then another thing you can do is after you compress each band, you can add gain to each band up here. So let's listen to it, and I have a feeling I'm going to want to pull up these top 3 bands. Yeah, so we're hearing mostly the snare drum on number 3 here. So here's the before. It's got some body to it. It doesn't sound bad, but it doesn't have like the thwack to it that I want. And then with the compressor. There you go. So that sounds a little bit better. It's a little beefier sounding. That's really all we're going to do to the drums. Let's move on to the guitar and bass. Again, I want more body. I want more mid-range boost. So let's start with this. let's start with the Exciter plugin under Specialized. And what I'm going to do with this is I want to pull up sort of like the mid-range a bit. So I'm going to turn off the dry signal. And find that sort of like mid-range body, kind of like in between the bass and the guitar. Yeah, so here's the before. It's kind of bassy, but it's sort of muffled, and then here's with the Exciter. Yeah, I kind of like color 2 better. It's a little bit warmer. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of sizzle, not in the high range, but in sort of the medium-high range. And for this, since this is on an aux track, I'm going to use the linear phase EQ. I found better luck and better sounds. I mean, it's a very small difference, but better luck using the linear phase EQ when you're summing instruments together and trying to EQ them as a group. With the linear phase EQ as opposed to the channel EQ. So I'm really just going to kind of boost up the 1 or 2 range just a little bit. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of a bass boost on the bottom end. And then filter out the sub-low frequencies. Just very, very subtle. So again, here's the before, and then the after. Yeah, the before's got sort of like, it's still a flat sounding. This has got a little bit more presence to it, but it's also thicker sounding. The keys and the clean guitar, I'm going to use the linear phase EQ on that as well. More to just sort of bring up the air a little bit on them, just make them a little bit brighter in the top end. That's pretty much it. Just sort of bring them out in the mix a little bit. The solo's fine. The synths are fine. And then the vocals, I really want these group vocals to be really thick, really rich sounding. So let's just solo out the chorus here. We're just so magical. This tragedy keeps running through my heart. And right now we're hearing the vocals with none of the time-based effects on it, just the dry signal. So I'm gonna throw the compressor on here, and then I'm gonna use the optical circuit. And I'm just going to try to beef these up a little bit, pull the ratio up a bit, the threshold down a bit, pull the attack time up so the front end of the words come through a little bit better, turn off the auto gain, and let's just toy around with this and see what we can get. We're just so magical, this tragedy keeps running through my heart. We're just like animals, nonsensical, you keep running through my heart. We're just so magical, this tragedy keeps running through my heart. We're just like animals. Yeah, it took a little bit more threshold to actually bring the vocals down into the gain reduction range, but we're sort of hovering around about 3 to 5 dB of reduction, so just fattening them up a little bit more. We're just so magical, this tragedy keeps running through my heart. We're just like animals. And I also pulled the parallel compression, the mix, down to about 73%. All right, one more thing I want to add that's really irking me is a de-esser. A de-esser is a fast-acting, high-frequency compressor that basically just acts on the sibilant characteristics of words. So sibilants is like your S's, and when you get 6 singers stacked up with harmonies, the S's can tend to build up and they really stick out. So a de-esser is going to sort of subdue those S's a bit. So let's listen to this and just listen for the S's. We're just so magical, this tragedy keeps running through. They really, really stick out like a sore thumb. So I'm going to add, under Dynamics, the de-esser plugin. And I'm actually just going to use a preset for this. I'm going to use the think it's the female voice strong de-esser. There we go.
We're just so magical, this tragedy.
Now it's a bit strong, so let's pull up the strength a bit, pull down the sensitivity a bit. Actually, pull up the sensitivity.
We're just so magical, this tragedy keeps running through my heart. We're just like animals, nonsensical, you keep running through my heart. We're just so magical, this tragedy.
And you'll see the activity light turn on just when it's compressing. So that's gonna sound a little bit better, and those S's won't stick out quite as much. All right, so that's all of our groups here. Let's play the song at the chorus and let's see what everything sounds like. I'm actually gonna jump over the guitar solo just so we can also hear the solo in the mix. Yeah, so everything's a bit loud. I'm gonna go ahead and pull down all of the aux tracks just a touch. I'm gonna pull down all of the reverb and wet signal that we created earlier, just a touch. And let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, I went ahead and pulled up the reverb back up on the vocals quite a bit. Let's just hear the intro, because there's that little synth lead at the beginning. I want to make sure that that's sitting okay in the mix as well. Cool, that sounds good. There's one little thing in the lead vocals in the verses I think I'm gonna fix, but I'll fix that in the next video. There's just a little bit of pitchiness going on there, so we'll fix that in the next one. But overall, I like the balance. It's really heavy. It's really thick sounding, and that's the sound I was going for. And the master fader still has a roughly about 5 or 6 dB of headroom, so that's good. So we want to make sure we leave enough headroom for mastering later. All right, so that's how you create submixes, or submasters as they're called, and bus process your instruments. So we're almost done with the mix, guys. Really what we need to do is I want to fix that one little thing with the vocals. I want to add some automation, and then we need to create some transitions and the intro for the song. The latter two videos are less about mixing and more about production, but we're going to do it anyway, and then we'll move on to the mastering stage. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.